Thank you, Joe. It's always, you always wonder what a friend will say, but he was kind. Joe, you do and did plan a great 2 days. I have seldom been at a conference where so much substantive issues and information has been put forward with every speaker that was here. Et enfin, vous tous et toutes vous êtes encore ici à cette heure. Vous êtes de très bons soldats et je vous remercie au nom des organisateurs parce que vous avez été là pendant 2 jours. Looking at these 2 days, as I mentioned, which have been tremendously substantive, with the right speakers and the right participants as well. I think what we've heard is that Africa is a new frontier when it comes to natural resources, be they extractive or on land, such as forestry, as well as agriculture. And that we have had a chance to look at a number of major challenges. These have been well put forward, associated with exploration, production, and use of natural resources. And the case has been well made for the importance of governance in relation to these, if indeed their exploration and use is going to be for the betterment of the African community, and indirectly to the rest of the world as well. I think we've seen the number of tools that now we have that are tremendously helpful. EITI, thank you, Peter, for another initiative that you launched, Beyond Transparency International. We've also heard about the natural, yes. We've also heard about the Natural Resources Charter. We didn't hear as much, but another important tool is the Responsible Mineral Development Initiative of the World Economic Forum, which I'm involved with, where we have developed a framework, and it's now been tested in a number of countries, which is supplementary to EITI. It doesn't replace some of the other ones. And beyond that, of course, we have the Africa Mining Vision. The World Bank has been doing tremendous work. The OECD has been doing work as well. We know that some of the regional banks are at it, as well as the UN, plus a number of think tanks. It is very much the theme of the day. And we've heard some common denominators in what was said and that come out of each of these tools and beyond, as I mentioned. And of course, the first one being transparency and accountability. And what we're hearing is that we're asking those exploiting those resources to publish what they pay to the governments, royalties, concessions, taxes, to publish their operation income and their operation data, to publish who their equity owners are, but also asking the governments to publish what they receive openly. We also say there's a life cycle to exploitation. So it's not just at the beginning that this transparency is so important, but throughout the life cycle. I think a second point that we've heard was important was the involvement of communities that will be affected or in the areas where the exploitation will take place early in the discussion, not at the end, so that they are left out or feel left out. And to develop multi-stakeholder action dialogues are some of the tools as well that we talk about. Thirdly, that capacity building is essential. We heard about the asymmetry when a government with very few resources faces an industry that comes with some of the best lawyers, accountants, investors along, and that in order to ensure that this asymmetry is corrected, capacity building and support is required. Fourthly, I think the training of local people, as opposed to importing technical and high-level technologist, I think is also part of what we're talking about. I think fifthly, which we may not have said as much about, but I think is important, is to conduct rigorous and open socioeconomic studies so that there is a common understanding by all those involved, the national government, the industries, and also, but especially, the local communities, so that they know what to expect, and therefore that they do not over or under expect. Sixthly, to establish common agreed compliance, monitoring, and enforcement mechanism. There will be conflicts during the time of a mine or oil exploration if we're looking at the extractive, and therefore better to think about those in front, at the front, instead of waiting until they happen. Seventhly, to agree on conflict resolution, of course, but 8, to provide for full environmental stewardship. We have not talked a lot about this at this conference, but we have. But this is so vital, and that it be right at the beginning, right until as well the end of when you close a mine, if we're talking about a mine, or if we're talking about forestry, that it's not an afterthought to rebuild that forest. And in the last panel, what we heard more perhaps than before is that regulations matter. Of course, we heard that voluntary guidelines can have their importance, but they do not replace essential, smart regulations in order to have a level playing field between countries and between companies who are at the front line. A few months ago, I was in Senegal and meeting with communities outside of Dakar whose land was being expropriated. They had lived there doing small farming, but having a livelihood as well as food. And a place was rezoned, the whole area was rezoned. Developers had succeeded in achieving that and were going to be building new housing developments so that the people were just pushed off their land. I won't tell you more about what has been happening, but we've tried to help. Meeting with President Kagame a few years ago, I was struck when he told me that there were some mines that had been there for now 15 years, close to the end of their cycle, and that Rwanda had not received 1 penny in taxes or royalties or concession fees. So something had happened at the time of the negotiation. Now, I'm talking about Rwanda. I don't think it's one case. So I think, again, going back, that this discussion that we've had over the past 2 days have been so important, and that responsible natural resources development in Africa depends on Africans and on the international community, and especially, as well as we have learned, on good governance from all. A final point before turning to our major speaker. Behind the statistics are people. And also, as a result of what we do, we either will have not only development, but social stability, as well as security in countries around the world, because we are touching some very important areas that will make a difference. One day, I would like to see from someone in this room the extent of the use of our natural resources that we have done in the last 60 years. And what is our estimate of what will be left in another 50 of some of the essential commodities? So we also have to think about us, the we generation, and think about some of the future generation, which in Davos this year became quite prominent in some of the speakers who were people like the head of the IMF, the head of the World Bank, Mahmoud, and people like that. So we've had, very good 2 days, and it's just great this afternoon to have our final speaker, Dr. Mahmoud Mohildin, who is a special envoy to the President of the World Bank to deal with a number of central issues affecting all of us today, but in particular, including coordinating the bank efforts on the agenda, on the post-2015 Millennium Development Goal agenda. Of course, he's widely published, has been on the board of a number of universities in Egypt, but also has been in lead positions in a number of research centers. Mahmoud, it's great to have you with us. We welcome you.